We have Michael Warren. He is the president of the Albright Stonebridge Group. That's a global strategic firm founded by a former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. Michael is also a board member for the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. That's an independent federal agency. Michael, good to have you with us on Bloomberg. Explain for those that don't know and are not familiar with OPIC, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. How does it work? I mean, it's an independent agency of the federal government, and it doesn't cost taxpayers anything.
That's correct, Pimm. First, thanks for having me on your show. OPIC is the government's development finance institution. It works to catalyze private sector investment. That's what we do, and we typically do it in areas where the political risk is higher than the private sector would be comfortable with making initial investments. We've catalyzed investments all over the world, and in Africa and Latin America, and even in Eastern Europe, and increasingly are looking at areas that in the Middle East and the MENA region, President Obama has committed $2 billion through OPIC funds to catalyze private sector investment in the MENA region, including $1 billion in Egypt alone, which he announced on May 19th.
Now, Michael, you just returned from Indonesia. There was a meeting there. Explain what happened and what was the point of this get-together with OPIC and all of the representatives from Indonesia and the Asian governments.
The Indonesia conference was actually a very interesting conference, and for a number of reasons. One, the administration is increasingly looking at the Asian region as an area where we want to encourage private sector investment and catalyze private sector investment with the growth rates, and not only in Indonesia, but in Vietnam and Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. And we held the conference in Indonesia. As you know, President Obama spent some time there as a youth, and we had just a terrific set of meetings. The president was there, his top advisors were there, and the top people in the Indonesian government, but also in the private sector. Indonesia alone is looking to spend hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 4 years, some coming from the Indonesian government, some of the investment coming from the Indonesia private sector, but importantly, looking for foreign direct investment, particularly American investment in Indonesia. Vietnam, Thailand are also thinking about this in a very, very serious way. And as we know, there are U.S. companies that are already making significant investments in Vietnam and Malaysia and Singapore as it stands.
Michael Warren, how do U.S. corporations tap into the Overseas Private Investment Corporation? How do they sort of leverage your expertise and your access to capital? Because, I mean, for example, I know that some small U.S. businesses, they were part of a program to upgrade the cargo handling ability of various facilities in India recently.
That's correct. That's correct. We often have calls for funds. In fact, there is one out right now. Going to the OPIC website is a terrific place to get started. We have very much believe in transparency and are working very hard to make sure that the private sector is very, very aware of all the initiatives that are underway within OPIC, and encourage any private sector organization to reach out to OPIC either through the website or through other mechanisms in the U.S. government. We then will have a call for funds and have an investment process that looks very similar to a private sector investment process. Pick the best funds that will work with not only with OPIC but with other private sector actors to make sure that we include not only the investment returns, but also make sure that the countries in question benefit from that investment. And one thing that we've really seen is as you catalyze the larger ecosystems in these countries, that then leads for further private sector investment that goes far and above what OPIC will do. It is worth knowing, and you mentioned at the very early part, Pimm, that OPIC is the only U.S. entity that returns capital to the taxpayers. We run an operating profit, and we return money to the U.S. taxpayer. So when a U.S. taxpayer puts money in and OPIC takes it, we do return capital, but we balance that return with making sure that we have the development agenda that will allow for us to work not only in the economic realm, but also in the national security and foreign policy realm.
Michael, how do you do this? I mean, do you offer low-cost loans? Do you offer loan guarantees? Or do you offer even low-cost insurance for U.S. businesses that want to operate overseas?
We do all three. We do all three, and we do all three of those, and we are still looking to make sure that they're low-cost loans, but they're not risk-free or interest-free loans. We certainly will negotiate, but they are loans that will allow for us to be able to catalyze the private sector. We have a very, very good understanding of the underlying dynamics in those marketplaces, and that allows us to be able to find the right combination of all of the instruments that you laid out, and the private sector.
We've got to leave it there. Michael Warren of Albright Stonebridge Group, also of OPIC.